Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're breaking down one of the biggest mental shifts elk hunters need to make if they want to stay successful deep into the fall, late October into November. Understanding how post-rut elk behavior completely changes from what you might have seen in September. If you've hunted the rut, you know how electric it feels. Bulls are bugling, cows are moving, and the mountains feel alive with chaos. But the minute October rolls in, a lot of that noise fades. The same drainages that were echoing with bugles a week ago can suddenly feel like ghost towns. Hunters walk the same trails and blow the same calls, but the responses are gone. It's like someone hit a switch. The truth is, they did, and it's built into the biology of the elk. When the rut ends, bulls shift from one priority to another, survival. Their energy, behavior, and movement patterns all change dramatically. They're done fighting, they're done chasing, and they're done burning the same amount of calories. The game becomes recovery and security. In this episode, we're going to break down exactly what that shift looks like, where the bulls go, how their daily routines change, and how to adapt your tactics, and why a lot of hunters get it wrong by trying to hunt October like it's still September. Once you understand what drives bulls after the rut, you can read the quiet woods just as clearly as you read the bugle-filled ridge line in September. Let's get into it. When the rut winds down, bulls go from operating on emotion to operating on instinct. Everything about their priorities flips. Just a few weeks earlier, they were burning thousands of calories a day chasing cows, fighting off rivals, and bugling their lungs out every night. They weren't thinking about survival, they were thinking about breeding. But when that drive ends, biology forces them to pay the price for all that effort. A post-rut bull is in rough shape. He's lost a lot of his body weight, right? 20-25%. Sometimes it's estimated to be even more. His neck and shoulders are sore. His fat reserves are low. In many herds, he's covered in scars and puncture wounds from fighting. And winter is just around the corner. Every move he makes from this point forward is about recovery, rest, nutrition, and safety. That's the key difference between September and October. In September, bulls are reckless. They've lost their brain, right? They bugle from exposed ridges, charge into calls, and fight in the open. In October, those same bulls become ghosts. They move little, they vocalize rarely, and they bed in the thickest cover they can find. You can't hunt them with noise and aggression alone anymore. You have to hunt them with a lot of patience and precision. During the rut, you can pattern cows to find bulls. After the rut, that logic fails a lot of times unless you're looking for raghorns or spikes. Bigger bulls, older bulls, they isolate. Some pair up with other bulls to form small bachelor groups. Others go completely solo. They're done competing and they have no reason to be near the herds anymore other than to follow from a distance using the same food, right? The cows and calves focus on finding consistent feed, while the bulls focus on resting in secure pockets that offer two things: good bedding cover and nearby food. This is why so many hunters think elk disappear after September. They don't. They just condense their world down to smaller, safer zones. The bugling that gave away their position, it stops. The daylight movement, it slows. They shift lower in elevation or deeper into north-facing timber where they can recover without harassment. If you're still hunting open ridges or just trying to use calls like it's September 15th, you're going to be hunting dead air. Think about the mindset of a bull this time of year. He's burned out, worn thin, and hyper aware of how much energy every movement costs. Instead of chasing noise, he's avoiding it. Instead of fighting, he's resting. Instead of showing off, he's disappearing. And as an elk hunter, your approach needs to change in the same way. The post-rut is not about chasing action. It's about anticipating recovery. You have to read sign more closely, glass slower, and trust subtle clues instead of just sound. When you finally do find a bull in October, it's not because he announced himself, usually. It's because you understood his priorities and put yourself in one place he felt safe enough to rest. When the rut ends, the landscape itself becomes part of the elk's recovery plan. Bulls that were spread out across ridges, meadows, and drainages in September, begin to consolidate into very specific zones, places that give them the best odds of surviving the coming winter while minimizing their energy output. Most of September's chaos happens in or near cow country, low benches, transition zones, and open feeding areas. Bulls go where the cows are because that's where breeding happens. But once those cows are bred and start breaking into smaller groups, the bulls pull away fast. They don't need the herds anymore, and they can't afford the energy loss of staying near them. Post-rut bulls often move higher, lower, or deeper depending on the terrain, weather, and hunting pressure. But the key theme here is security first, feed second. These are the kinds of areas that let them bed undisturbed all day and still feed without walking far. Think about steep north-facing slopes with dense timber, dark pockets below windswept ridges, or benches just off major drainages that see little human travel. If you've ever glassed a basin in mid-October and seen nothing, that doesn't mean there's no elk. It usually means you're looking in the wrong microzone. The bulls you chased during the rut might be only half a mile away, just down in the shadows where no sunlight hits. They prefer those north-facing aspects because the air stays cool, the ground stays soft, and visibility is low. They can lay in one spot all day, hear danger coming, and still get up to feed within a few hundred yards. Elevation plays a major role in these shifts. In warm Octobers, bulls may hold on to mid or even higher elevation timber longer, especially if there's still green feed or minimal snow. But as soon as the first real storm system drops measurable snow, they're going to begin transitioning toward lower, sheltered zones, usually 500 to 1,000 feet down from their rutting areas. Those spots aren't necessarily winter range yet, but they serve as recovery range, a middle ground that balances feed quality and safety. Pressure also shapes this movement. By early October, bulls have endured weeks of bugle chasing hunters, calls echoing through the timber, and constant human scent in the bedding zones. When that pressure doesn't let up, they don't wander further, they pull tighter. They'll stay in the same general basin but bed in steeper, nastier pockets where they can see below and escape upward. If you're not finding elk where you heard them bugling 2 weeks ago, start looking at the edges, the unglamorous little fingers of timber or side draws nobody bothers to hike into or doesn't want to because it's nasty. Another overlooked change in post-rut location is proximity to feed. During the rut, bulls burn energy traveling miles between herds and wallows. Afterward, they shrink their home range dramatically. A lot of post-rut bulls live within a 1 square mile zone for weeks at a time. They don't want to waste calories walking when they can bed within a few hundred yards of food and water. That's why small benches with mixed vegetation, grass, browse, and even young aspen shoots are gold this time of year. Thermal cover is another critical factor. After the rut, bulls start thinking ahead to colder weather. They gravitate to spots with both shade for warmth control and canopy for isolation. The best recovery areas are often a blend of old timber, deadfall, and small openings. That combination provides what bulls crave: protection, peace and quiet, and easy calories. If you want to locate bulls in this phase, focus on patterns of avoidance. Where's the wind swirling? Where's the light limited? Where would a hunter not want to sit or cross? Those are the spots post-rut bulls love. You're going to rarely find them on open slopes where you can see them from a mile away, unless they're just moving through. You're going to find them tucked into the blind spots of the mountain, places that feel dead until you walk right into them. The longer you hunt elk, the more you realize that October success is about changing your map, not just your mindset. Stop chasing noise and start reading terrain for intent. Try to ask yourself, if I were worn out, lean, and tired of human pressure, where would I go to hide and heal? That answer will take you straight into post-rut bull country. If September is defined by chaos and noise, October is often defined by rhythm and silence. Bulls go from burning energy nonstop to conserving energy every ounce of it. Once the rut ends, their days become predictable, almost clockwork. But that predictability only helps if you slow down enough to see the pattern. Let's start with movement. During the rut, bulls cover serious ground, miles a day chasing cows, bugling, and checking ridgelines for rivals. After the rut, that behavior disappears almost overnight. Movement becomes measured and minimal. Bulls shift to small loops between bedding and feeding zones, often within a few hundred yards. They've got nothing left to prove and no energy to waste. If they don't need to move, they don't. Most post-rut movement happens in low light. Bulls feed longer in the evenings and occasionally stretch their feeding into early morning if conditions are calm. Once the sun's up and thermals stabilize, they're already headed for bed. In September, you can sometimes catch them moving midday because adrenaline overrides caution. But in October, daylight movement almost vanishes. Bulls that once bugled at sunrise are now tucked into dark timber before the first rays even hit the slope. That's why glassing for post-rut elk demands patience and timing. You're not going to necessarily see bulls walking skyline at first light. You're going to catch glimpses of them slipping through the shadows or emerging briefly to feed in edge cover. If you're glassing wide open country, you're going to miss 90% of what's happening. This is when it pays to spend time behind the glass on small, overlooked features. Timbered benches, shady pockets on north aspects, or narrow seams between feed and cover. Now let's talk about feeding. After the rut, bulls are running on empty. They've burned through fat reserves and muscle mass, and they're desperate to rebuild before winter. But they're not reckless about it. They prefer food sources close to cover, places where they can feed without being exposed for long periods. Their diet also shifts subtly. During the rut, bulls prioritize quick, tender grasses. Post-rut, they broaden their diet to include more browse, shrubs, woody plants, and evergreen tips. This diet isn't as rich in calories, but it's stable and easy for them to access. It's also closer to bedding areas, allowing bulls to feed efficiently without traveling too far. Timing plays a huge role here too. Bulls that fed all night will bed by sunrise a lot of times and stay put until late afternoon. They often rebed multiple times throughout the day, especially in areas with variable wind or sunlight. So unlike rutting bulls that move boldly, post-rut bulls bed carefully, always trying to choose spots with good sight lines and consistent thermals. You can learn a lot about a bull's behavior by studying his beds. The deeper and more protected they are, the more stressed or pressured he's been. This cycle, feed, bed, rest, feed again, runs like clockwork for weeks. It might not sound exciting, but it's a gold mine for patient hunters. Once you identify where a bull's doing it, he's extremely consistent and less pressured. He's not traveling miles. He's not unpredictable. He's doing the same thing in the same pocket until a major storm or that pressure wave forces a change. Wind and thermals also play into this new rhythm. Because bulls move less, they depend heavily on steady airflow around their bedding zones. That's why they pick areas with reliable wind patterns, usually where the wind is dropping early in the morning and afternoon, or late morning even, it's going to start rising up that hill and stay pretty consistent until evening when it starts coming downhill. They want areas that don't fluctuate much. This helps them detect danger and stay safe without moving. For hunters, the takeaway is simple. Post-rut elk don't require you to cover more ground. They require you to slow down. You can't run and gun your way into success all the time. Instead, you have to glass methodically, listen for the small things, right? And trust what the country is showing you. The biggest mistake I see a lot of October hunters make is walking past elk because they expect the same level of movement and noise as September. But bulls aren't gone. They're just invisible. They've condensed their world down to comfort and safety. And once you understand that their daily rhythm is all about efficiency, you can start matching your strategy to theirs. That's what separates the hunters who say they disappeared from the ones who quietly fill their tags in silence. Now, once the rut fades, the social structure of the elk herd resets completely oftentimes. Early in October, the first half, we'll say, you might still find some bulls with the cows, right? Oftentimes, a herd bull is mistaken as the herd bull. The real herd bull oftentimes has moved off, and it's a smaller bull that has stepped in, a bull that was a satellite, and he's now the king, right? And he's going to try to enjoy that for a little while. So those movements that were defined in September, dominant bulls herding cows, satellite circling, constant bugling, those are going to disappear almost overnight. By mid-October, we're talking about entire herd dynamic changes. And understanding that shift is critical if you want to stay ahead of the curve. First, let's talk about the cows. During the rut, cows drive bull behavior. They determine where the action happens, where bulls travel, and how vocal the mountains get. But after the breeding period ends, cows go right back to their priority, food and security. They start feeding longer, bedding lower, and focusing on rebuilding body composition before winter. They're still vocal with each other, but the tone changes. It's social communication now, not breeding chatter. Bulls, on the other hand, they're going to pull away, the bigger, older bulls. Their connection to the cows weakens quickly, and by mid-October, most mature bulls are living alone or loosely grouped with other bulls in recovery zones. That means you can't just rely on cow calls or herd chatter to pull a bull in anymore. He's not seeking companionship, he's seeking solitude. So you might still see a few bulls shadowing herds through early October, but they're usually younger, lower ranking bulls that didn't do as much breeding. The mature bulls, the ones that spent September running hard and fighting daily, they've lost interest in cows now. They're broken down, they're sore, and they're focused on calories and cover. That's why the best way to find them isn't near herds, it's in those quiet, overlooked places where nobody's looking. Now add pressure into this mix. By the time October arrives, most bulls have endured weeks of bugling, right? Bug spray scent and boot tracks through their bedding areas. They've been harassed nonstop by hunters, and that pressure has consequences. Every time they get bumped or winded, they don't move miles, they move smarter. They pick terrain that gives them control, steeper slopes, thicker timber, and vantage points with stable thermals. They use the wind to their advantage, bed in places where scent carries predictably, and they listen before they move. In other words, they become the best teachers of mountain survival you're ever going to find. They've learned what danger smells like, sounds like, and looks like, and by mid-October, they're hunting you just as much as you're hunting them. That's why the post-rut phase is where stealth and patience becomes everything. Loud calling, clumsy movement, and predictable access routes will blow them out instantly. If you're chasing bugles or cow calling every ridge, you're playing by September's rules in an October game. To kill a post-rut bull, you have to hunt the sign, not the sound. Look for fresh poop near dark benches, or feeding sign along shaded creek bottoms. Those subtle clues will tell you far more than a bugle ever will. Weather compounds all of this. Early snow, cold fronts, or temperature drops can accelerate post-rut changes. When the first snow hits, bulls often move to slightly lower, more protected slopes with better feed access and consistent thermals. But here's the catch. They won't move all at once. It's a slow, selective shift based on micro conditions. A foot of snow in the high country might push some bulls down immediately, while others hold high if there's still feed available and less human activity. Wind also plays a bigger role this time of year. During the rut, bulls tolerate swirling thermals because adrenaline is in control. Post-rut, they don't take chances. They're going to abandon a basin if the wind becomes too unpredictable. That's why your setup, location, and timing matter more now than ever. You need to be thinking like a bull. How does the wind flow through this draw in the morning? Where will it settle in the afternoon? Which slope offers both safety and feed without unpredictable air currents? Pressure and weather together create a predictable pattern. Bulls find safety in consistency. When hunting pressure drops after the early season rush and weather stabilizes after a front, they reestablish a calm rhythm. That's your best window to strike. You're going to see bulls start feeding more confidently, exposing themselves slightly more in the evenings, and revisiting well-used bedding areas. If you can time it right, catching that calm between fronts and before the next wave of pressure, you're going to find bulls that have let their guard down a little, just enough to make a mistake. But that moment won't last long. As soon as the next storm rolls through or another hunter blows through the drainage, they're going to vanish again into the timber. In the post-rut, you don't win by being too aggressive. You win by being aware. You're not outsmarting bulls, you're syncing with their survival rhythm. And once you start seeing how pressure and weather shape every decision they make, you stop chasing elk and you start anticipating them. If September rewards aggression, October rewards discipline. Once you understand how dramatically elk behavior changes after the rut, your strategy has to follow suit. The hunters who keep chasing bugles in October usually go home empty-handed. The ones who slow down, observe, and hunt with intention, they start tagging bulls in country everyone else thinks is empty. The post-rut is a thinking man's game. Every decision, where you glass, how you move, when you call, all of those decisions have to match the bull's new mindset of recovery and security. Instead of covering miles, you're dissecting pockets. Instead of calling, you're reading the wind. Instead of chasing action, you're setting up in the right place before movement happens. The first adjustment is mental. You've got to stop hunting with your ears. Bugles are gone, cow talk is quiet, and movement is minimal. That doesn't mean bulls aren't there. It means you have to read the mountain differently. Focus on tracks, the poop, and the subtle disturbances. Fresh, dark poop or tracks still crisp, but the edges are far more valuable clues than any vocalization you could hear at this time of year. A good glassing session over shaded benches or dark timber edges can tell you more than hours of hiking are ever going to. After the rut, bulls don't live across entire basins. They tend to live in small zones. When you find the fresh sign, slow down and work that micro area thoroughly, you've got to sit longer, glass from multiple angles, use the clock face method and break the country into slices. That's going to be what is the ticket for you this time of year. Remember, bulls may only move a few hundred yards between bed and feed. If you push too fast, you might walk right past them. The post-rut is also all about the precision, right? We've talked about it a lot. Blind calling, hiking ridge after ridge, or just diving into random drainages without a plan just burns daylight and bumps elk. But when you've got confirmation, fresh poop, consistent wind, and a solid feeding pocket, then it's time to move in slowly, approaching from above when you can, keeping the wind stable and letting terrain mask your movement. If you spook a bull now, he's not circling back tomorrow. Post-rut elk are unforgiving of mistakes. October and early November weather dictate everything as well. Stable high-pressure systems often bring calm thermals and consistent feeding patterns. That's your best window to glass open faces or hunt transition zones. When a new front rolls in, expect bulls to hunker down. Use that downtime to reposition and scout new areas. Then, the moment it clears, get back out because they're going to feed hard to make up for that lost time. In September, you can sometimes get away with imperfect wind because bulls are distracted. Not now. In October, one bad swirl ends it. So treat thermals like a living thing. Check them constantly and plan your setups to stay just off the crest of ridges where you can feel the air but remain hidden. Move like you're stalking a bedded mule deer, not chasing an elk herd. Try to remember that post-rut bulls prioritize rest and calories. North-facing timber, benches with mixed vegetation, and leeward slopes with both cover and feed are ideal recovery zones. Those spots often look boring on a map, but are where the biggest bulls hide out once the chaos ends. If you find multiple beds and thick timber with poop nearby, stay put. That bull probably isn't too far. The hardest lesson for a lot of hunters is learning to trust the quiet. The lack of bugles doesn't mean failure, it means opportunity. This is the part of elk hunting where patience pays off. Every extra minute you spend glassing or waiting for the wind to settle compounds your odds. The best October hunters aren't lucky. They're stubborn enough to sit still while everybody else hikes away. When you adapt your strategy to match the post-rut, you're going to realize elk haven't vanished at all. They've just changed the rules. Once you start hunting with those rules in mind, success becomes more predictable. You're not reacting to elk behavior anymore, you're anticipating it. And that's the real mark of experience. Understanding when to be loud and when to be silent, when to move and when to stay put, when to call and when to simply watch. The bulls that survived September didn't get lucky, they got smart, and the hunters who tag them in October do the same. If you're serious about taking this kind of knowledge deeper, that's exactly why I built Team Backbone. It's more than just a membership. It's a way to sharpen your edge with exclusive tools, strategies, and a tribe of hunters who refuse to quit. Inside, you're going to get 20% off site-wide on all Backbone Unlimited gear, a member-only t-shirt shipped to your door every month, not available anywhere else, full access to the digital content vault of guides, checklists, fitness programming, backcountry strategies, and mindset training, a private Facebook group with direct access to me, and a community of driven hunters who live relentless, direct call, text, or email access to me for personalized advice on training, hunting strategy, or just sharpening your edge, and automatic entry into monthly gear giveaways. This is built for the guys who train for the hunt, push themselves in the off season, and want to be part of a tribe that makes them better. If you're ready for that kind of inner circle, then Team Backbone is waiting for you at backboneunlimited.com underneath our membership tab. Thanks for being here. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.